Kurt, K-U-R-T, Rosenthal, R-O-S-E-N-T-H-A-L.
Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your current employment?
The City of Dubuque Police Department.
How long have you been so employed?
I will have 22 years on this September.
What are your present duties?
I am an investigator with the Criminal Investigation Division.
How long have you been there?
I'll be back there for 5 years come this September.
Do you have any special training and qualifications required to do your job?
I've been through multiple trainings over my career specific to CID. I've been to crime scene schools, interview and interrogation, homicide school, and countless others.
Do you have certain trainings and certifications that are required as part of your employment?
Yes, sir.
Are you up to date on all of that?
I am.
When you arrived at the scene, what did you do?
As soon as we got on scene, we were advised that the initial person who found Miss Dazey had encountered her son Tyler Dazey inside the residence, and we believed that he was still inside. So at that time I went to the south side of the residence as part of the perimeter.
Were there other officers also securing the perimeter?
Yes, sir, there was multiple officers on scene.
What do you do when you take the perimeter?
We're just covering points of exit, make sure somebody doesn't run out the back door or jump out a window.
You're also looking so nobody goes in while officers are clearing?
Absolutely.
Do you also check for signs of forced entry?
Yes, but based on where I was located, that really wasn't a duty of mine.
At some point, did you learn that the house was cleared and someone was in custody?
Yes, I heard radio traffic from one of the patrol officers inside that they had one in custody.
What did you do at that point?
At that point in time, I circled around to the front of the residence, and at the front door, I came in contact with my captain, Captain Style. He had already been inside, kind of briefed me on the injuries that he observed, and noted that Tyler Dazey was in fact the person they had in custody. At that point in time, we kind of decided who was going to do what moving forward, and I was tasked with trying to interview Mr. Dazey at the Law Enforcement Center. And then Corporal Stair was going outside to get a Tyvek suit so that we could dress Mr. Dazey, and that's when I entered the residence. Then returned back to the area of the bedrooms. I peered into the east bedroom, and I could see that Miss Dazey was clearly deceased in her bed. I took a few steps into that room. I was only in the room for maybe 15 seconds, but I was able to note the severe lacerations to her head and face. There was pooling of blood near her right side of her neck, and I could also see that she had a couple fingers severed on her left hand. I backed out, and then I went back into the west bedroom where Mr. Dazey was being secured.
Did you observe a toolbox in that bedroom?
I did. Inside of that bedroom, there was a large black and blue toolbox on wheels like a mechanic would have in their shop.
Okay, now at some point in your investigation, you had contact with Tyler Dazey, is that correct?
Correct. When I entered the bedroom, when I was first on scene while we were waiting someone to bring in a Tyvek suit.
Did you have anything to do with putting on the Tyvek suit? Did you assist?
Well, I did. I zipped it up.
What's the purpose of a Tyvek suit?
In this case, it was to preserve any possible evidence that was contained on Tyler or Mr. Dazey's body, specifically if there was any blood, hairs, or DNA from Jennifer.
And it has little boots that go with it as well?
Correct. It's all one piece.
Did you make any observations about Mr. Dazey at that time?
He had a blank stare on his face. He was moving slowly, lethargically, but he was following our commands.
Did you have any conversations with Mr. Dazey at that time?
Not really a conversation. I introduced myself. I told him that he wasn't being placed under arrest, but he was being detained, and that we were going to be transported into the law enforcement center where we would talk to him down there. I asked him if he understood. He didn't respond audibly, but he did nod to me.
Did you end up taking him to the hospital first?
We ended up shifting gears, and eventually Officer Hesselbacher and I would transport him to Mercy.
Why did you decide to take him to the hospital?
Based on how he was acting, we were concerned that he may have ingested some kind of substance before police arrival, and we wanted to make sure that his vitals were stable and that he was medically cleared before we took any further steps in the investigation.
What happened when you got to the hospital?
We entered the ER with Mr. Dazey. Staff directed us to the behavioral health room because it wasn't so much he didn't have any traumatic injuries or anything that needed to be dealt with right away. Hesselbacher took him into that room. I met with staff just to explain to them the purpose of us being there and what we needed from them.
Was staff familiar with him?
Yes, one of the nurses specifically was familiar with Mr. Dazey.
Was Mr. Dazey examined?
He was by both nurses and the ER doctor.
What was the result of that examination to the extent you know?
They advised me that his vitals were all stable, he was cognizant, and that they would be clearing him medically.
Okay, so while you were at the hospital, was there any decisions made regarding search warrants?
There was. Prior to us ever leaving Avoca, we knew that we would be applying at this time for at least 2 search warrants, one for the house on Avoca and one for Tyler Dazey's person to collect any potential evidence. I contacted Captain Style, my captain, and then Hoff, who was working on the search warrant applications, to see what we specifically wanted to apply for, what we wanted to gather. And it was at that time we decided we wanted to collect specimens of his urine and his blood to go along with other items.
Did you stay at the hospital pending that warrant?
Yes, I advised hospital staff that we were going to hang tight there because we can't draw blood. We need the techs up there to do that. So we just stayed up there awaiting approval for the search warrant from the judge.
Was the warrant approved ultimately?
It was.
While you were waiting for the warrants, did you have any conversations with Mr. Dazey?
I did, and it was specific to the search warrant. Both Hoff and I assumed that Mr. Dazey lived at 1605 Avoca, but I had not confirmed that with him. So after my conversation with Hoff, I walked back into the BH room and I asked Mr. Dazey if he resided on Avoca. He just shrugged his shoulders. I then asked him if he normally stayed at his mom's residence, if that was his normal residence. His response was, "Whose mom?" I then asked him, "Is Jennifer Dazey your mother?" And his response to that question was pretentious.
Did you feel he was just being obstinate with you at that time?
Absolutely.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
And it's leading, sustained.
At some point, did Mr. Dazey indicate he needed to use the bathroom?
Yeah, that was roughly about 25 minutes after we got to the ER. He advised that he needed to urinate. I knew that we were working on getting a search warrant to collect his urine, so I asked him if he could just hold tight. We had some processing to do. That's when he stated to me, "I'm letting go, the keys are yours." I again asked him, "Hang tight for me, we need to collect." That's when I told him, "We're going to collect your urine." He then said, "I got to pee." Again, I urged him to just hold on for a couple minutes. He then leaned back in the sofa that he was seated on, and I could hear him urinating inside the Tyvek suit.
Did he do that more than once?
Multiple times while we were at the hospital.
Did at one point you tell him that he could have held it?
I did. I was a little disturbed that a grown man wouldn't hold his urine for a couple minutes, and his answer to that was, "Wars are meant to be fought."
Did you try to collect a sample at one point when he was urinating?
Yes, approximately an hour later, we had already secured the search warrant. I had advised Mercy staff that we were ready to do the collection. They were outside our room just getting their gear ready to go. I walked back in the room. Mr. Dazey advised that he had to urinate again. At this point in time, he had crawled down on the floor, asked if I could help him up. I helped him up off the floor. I told him, "Hey, you don't have to pee in your suit this time. Staff's going to walk in any minute. We'll have you urinate into a cup." Within seconds, staff walks in, and as they walk through the front door or walk into the door of the room, I hear him urinating in his suit again. I scrambled to try to unzip his suit and asked one of the nurses to bring over a collection cup. By the time that happens, we got just a very small sample.
Did you have another effort at collecting a sample?
Yeah, approximately 40 minutes later, Skrupski and I had, Officer Skrupski and I had transported Mr. Dazey from Mercy back down to the law enforcement center. I was at my desk. Skrupski was in the interview room with Dazey, just awaiting me to get prepared to come in and start interviewing him. Skrupski told me that he had to urinate again, so I asked Skrupski to escort Mr. Dazey to the bathroom, and I had a collection cup with me. We met in there. Again, I had unzipped his Tyvek suit to expose him. At that point in time, he thought that he felt as though he needed to urinate, but he didn't know if he could and thought it might be a couple seconds. He then stated, "I'm not trying to dick you around." I told him, "Hey, we got time. We'll just sit here. Let me know when you need to go." Within a matter of seconds, he said, "Quantum entanglement, brother," and he started urinating. I was only a step away with the cup. I was able to reach into his stream and got a proper sample.
What was his demeanor at that time?
Completely cognizant, like he's telling me, "Hey, I'm not trying to mess with you here. I got to pee, but it's going to take me a second." He was, in my opinion, completely aware of what was happening.
At some point, did you observe and photograph Mr. Dazey?
Yes, as part of the search warrant execution, which we did after the interview, a part of that we took photos. I took photos of his person. During that time, I noted some abrasions on the backside of his right hand, two on his index finger, one on this middle knuckle and one on this knuckle, and then a third abrasion to his ring finger, middle knuckle.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 41. You recognize that photograph?
Yes, I do. I took that photo.
I would move to have Exhibit 41 admitted.
Any objection?
Your Honor, I'm going to object pursuant to 5.403. I think that photograph is just flat out inappropriate.
Because what?
Just flat out inappropriate.
Let me view it, please.
Permission to approach?
Yes. Okay, State's Exhibit 41 is admitted.
Yes. May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes. I don't think you're plugged in.
Were you able to identify the person that you took the photo of?
Yes, that is a photo of Mr. Tyler Dazey.
And you positively identified him as such?
Correct.
And is he the same Tyler Dazey that is the defendant in this case before the court today?
Yes, he is.
Now, you can take that down. Did you interview Mr. Dazey at the law enforcement center?
Yes. Corporal Gorell and I interviewed him at 12:01 p.m. that afternoon in a recorded interview room in our CID offices.
Did you ask him about his sleep from the day before, the night before?
I did. That is a question that I regularly ask most people that I interview, just their normal sleep patterns. And I asked Mr. Dazey specifically how much sleep he had gotten the night before. He advised that he didn't get much sleep, upwards to maybe an hour at the most.
Did you also ask him when he last showered?
I did. I asked him about his bathing habits, and he advised that he used the shower in the main floor bathroom. He advised that he had taken one shower the evening before, after he had a workout. He ballparked that to be around 8 p.m., and then he advised he had taken another shower just prior to police coming into his home that morning. And that is why he was naked.
Did you ask him if he owns a hatchet?
I did. Mr. Dazey acknowledged that he did own a hatchet. He advised me that he kept that hatchet in his toolbox within his bedroom, and he also noted that he had actually observed that hatchet that morning.
Did Mr. Dazey make any statements concerning his discipline and awareness of surroundings?
There were multiple times during the interview where he stressed how disciplined he was and how he was very aware of everything around him and what was happening.
Did you ask any questions about the layout of the house?
I did, and as soon as I asked that question, he said, "You were there." So he was obviously recognized I was in the room with him earlier that morning.
Did you ask him about his relationship with his mother?
I did. His response was, "It's fine, except for when she's acting sneaky like a witch." He then went on to talk about how his mother was part of a covenant of witches. I also asked, I followed that up with how he thought his mom thought of him. And his answer to that question was, "I think she hated me so much that she hated herself."
Did you ask when he last had a conversation with his mother?
Yes, he advised that was just before police came in and got him, and at the time she was practicing witchcraft.
Did he say where that conversation took place?
Yes, he stated that his mother was in her bed, again, noting that she was practicing witchcraft.
Did you ask about specific events that morning?
I did multiple times throughout the interview, early on when I tried to hone in on what he was doing in the minutes, the hours before police arrived. He would either say that he didn't remember or he would shift topic. Then toward the end of the interview, I again asked him what he could specifically recall happening before police got there. And he said that he was having a conversation in his head that he did not want to think about. This conversation was about trauma. He didn't want to think about it, and he would not expand on that when I asked him what that conversation was.
Did you ask him about his mom's witchcraft?
We went into that in a little more detail. He described her witchcraft as putting evil on him. He said just evil. I then asked him how he felt about his mother practicing witchcraft. And I think that is when he gets into stating something similar to, I just gave up. I just don't care. I don't need her to validate me. He then followed that comment up with, why would I care what a whore thinks? You sit around and drink yourself stupid, fuck like animals, and ruin your children's lives. Why would I care what a person like that thinks?
Did he say anything about you know how witches are?
Yeah, that was in reference to, I asked him if he had ever called his mother a whore to her face. And he said, yeah, I did. I asked how his mom responded to that, and he said, she's a witch. You know how witches are. Oh, I'm better than you. I will be your fear. I will be your enemy.
Did you ask him to explain his mother's traumatic injuries?
Yes, about an hour and 18 minutes into the interview, I got to the point where I wanted him to explain the significant and severe injuries that she had. And when I asked him how she got these traumatic injuries, his response was witchcraft. I then specified that I was referring to the physical injuries to her body. He again responded witchcraft. I then asked him, I was going to need a little better understanding of how witchcraft could cause such injuries. At that time, Mr. Dazey ended the interview.
Did you leave the recorder on when you left the interview room?
Yes, the recorder stayed on until we were all done executing the search warrant on Mr. Dazey's person. So at the conclusion of the interview, that's when I told him that we had to collect evidence from him, provided him a copy of the search warrant. Carell and I then exited the room to gather up our gear for collection. After the fact, when I went back and watched the interview to type up my report, I noted that Mr. Dazey made some comments aloud while we were out of the room.
What did he say? What were the comments?
He stated, "I would gladly spend an eternity in hell if she could just have a chance at heaven."
Was Mr. Dazey also alone in the squad car when you brought him to the port, when he was brought to the port down at the law enforcement center?
Yes, so Skorupski and I transported him from Mercy back down to the law enforcement center. Once we pulled into the Sally port, the two of us, I exited the squad car. In that process, I dropped my portable radio, the battery bounced off, and we were looking on the ground for my battery. Then we got him out. So he was in the squad car for over a minute before we pulled him out. After the fact, I went back and reviewed that footage from the squad car.
Did he say anything during that time he was in the squad car?
He did. Mr. Dazey made a couple comments during that time. He stated at first, "They will never figure out the psychology. You have a choice. Conquer me or hell it is." He then paused, stated, "I love you, I'm tired," and that was the end of the comments.
Now, before Mr. Dazey was taken up to the jail floor after the interview, did he say anything spontaneously?
Yes, it was actually, he and I were just standing in the interview room together because we collected the Tyvek suit as evidence. I was waiting for Garrell to return with some clothing. We weren't talking, I wasn't questioning him, and he just stated aloud, "Witchcraft, brother, witchcraft. A lot that is wrong with my life. When people are trying to get in your way, when you are just trying to pursue happiness."
Did you tell him he was being arrested before he was taken up to the jail floor?
I did. He actually asked me if he was getting showered in, referring to going up to the jail floor. It was at that time I told him he was being arrested for the murder of his mother. His response was, "It's hard to argue witchcraft in court, isn't it?"
During all of your interactions with Mr. Dazey, did he at any time ever deny harming his mother or the dog?
Not once.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. On direct examination, you talked a little bit about watching the traffic cameras related to Kylie Frey or Kylie Dazey.
Correct.
All right. Are there any traffic cameras on Avoca?
There are not.
And which traffic camera were you watching on the corner of 24th and Jackson?
There's a camera at 24th and Jackson directed to the north, which captures the block in which she lives in, or lived in at the time.
And does it show the front door of her residence?
It does not. Her door is on the south side of the residence, recessed away from the street. The front door is actually for the apartment upstairs.
All right. And are there any other exits from her residence?
There is a back door on the main floor.
Okay. And I take it from your traffic camera, you couldn't observe those?
No.
All right. Life 360, and I think you talked about this a little bit, but Life 360 only actually tracks the phone, doesn't it?
Correct.
All right. So if the phone doesn't move, it doesn't track anything.
Correct.
And is it fair to say that, I know you, is it fair to say that lots of people know about the thousands of traffic cameras in Dubuque?
Some do, some that have lived here forever, even actively involved in crimes, somehow don't realize it.
Okay. But lots of people do know about them, don't they?
Lots do, lots don't.
Okay. And they're not exactly hidden, are they?
No, they're not disguised in any fashion.
Okay. They're right out there sitting on top of the light poles.
Correct.
Now, you talked a little bit about quantum entanglement.
That was something Mr. Dazey stated to me right before he started urinating in the bathroom at the law enforcement center.
Did he explain to you what quantum entanglement was?
Tried to.
Okay. What did he tell you?
It's hard for me to explain.
If I were to show you your report, I think it appears in at least 2 different places in your report. Would that help refresh your memory?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm looking at pages 50 and 52. I need my reading glasses.
Can you point out this one you're referring to?
Yeah, there's that one, and then over on 52, there's, he talks about it in this area.
Okay. I'm ready, Mr. Blair.
Now, did he kind of explain to you what he meant by quantum entanglement?
From what I captured from that is, if I was sitting at home and I was doing something, say I was drinking a beer, and I thought about you, Mr. Blair, then all of a sudden, wherever you were on this earth, that you would get the urge to drink beer, that I could put thoughts onto you.
Okay. He also used that term in reference to kind of a possession, didn't he? And I'll refer you to page 50. He specifically talked as it related to possession.
Are you referring to someone trying to take over your being? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. He did make note of that.
On direct examination, you talked some about his mother practicing witchcraft. Did he explain to you how she practiced witchcraft?
From her bed, on cell phones with the other persons in the covenant, and that she would practice witchcraft upon him.
Well, and didn't he say that she did that by meditating upon him and putting thoughts in his head and possession and things like that?
Yes, he went into that.
He didn't actually talk about a conversation with his mother. He simply talked about witchcraft in response to you asking about the last time he had a conversation with his mother. Isn't that right?
I asked him when he last had a conversation with his mother, and he stated, right before you guys came and got me, she was practicing witchcraft.
Right. He starts going into, right before you guys came and got me, she was practicing witchcraft. Is that right?
That was response to his last conversation, his last interaction with his mother.
Okay. He said lots of things that really didn't make a lot of sense, didn't he?
Well, every time we would get to something pointed and he would start, say, acknowledge that he had a hatchet, then when we would get more pointed, then he would take me in a different direction.